right direction this time with their tactics. They've slightly shifted from focusing on telling you that a vote for Labour is a vote for reform is a vote for Labour.
No, I don't think any of the tactics are particularly cutting through. I think the stuff about tax was recycled from the 1980s, very unimaginative. The vote for reform is a vote for Labour seemed to encourage people to vote reform rather than not. And I just don't see any of their tactics. They're not answering the big problems facing this society. They've not cast the election in terms of ongoing decline, the collapse in productivity, the desperate need for renewal. And it seems a very narrow, uninspired selection and offer. And really, they're only helped when their opponents make mistakes. And I think Farage's kind of paean to Putin is a genuine mistake by reform. And I think that a lot of don't knows, a lot of I might vote for Tory or I might vote for reform may well go back to the Conservatives. And so I think the biggest thing helping the Conservatives at the moment is Nigel Farage's remarks on Putin.
Do you think? I mean, look, I was expecting you to champion them in some way or find something good about the Conservatives because you're a former advisor to David Cameron. Rishi Sunak was talking yesterday when he said, don't fall into Labour's trap, don't sleepwalk into July the 4th, once they've got power, they will change every rule to make sure that they stay there and stuff like that. I mean, that's what, those are the words that Rishi Sunak used yesterday. And it seems that he is now focusing on almost personal or attacking the party itself. Ivor Kaplan, former Labour Defence Minister. What do you think? Tory tactics, do you think they're going to actually start to win some people over? I mean, they talked about a massive Labour landslide as well. This would be undemocratic sort of thing, or what do you think?
Well, firstly, Nana, it's great to be on. And just to say that obviously no votes have been cast yet, or very few. So we don't know what will happen on July the 4th. And, there's a lot for Labour to do to make sure that we're in the right positions to get people to vote accordingly on the 4th of July. But from the Conservative point of view, I'm not really sure what's going on. Because if, in general terms, you have to say that the Prime Minister seems to be hell-bent on being as aggressive as possible. As he did the other night in Question Time with with one or two people who came and asked him about ECHR. I just think it was so aggressive that it just turns people off. And I think that's one of the problems that the Conservative Party have had. And this has been going on for possibly 6 months, maybe longer. And I think that's one where people are now saying, well, we don't want to do this. And to some extent, that might be helping Farage. That's not my business, Farage or Sunak. But the one thing you can say is that it's quite clear now that Farage is a Putin lover. And that's what he really showed the other day. And I genuinely, from a defence point of view, I wouldn't want to see someone like Farage in the House of Commons.
Well, OK, so first of all, if we come back to Rishi Sunak, his comments on Question Time actually got him a round of applause. So he said that he would literally he'd rather a British court would trump any European court. And then he was questioned about it, and because... No, hold on, let me finish. So he was then questioned about it, where he said, well, actually, the ECHR, Fiona Bruce pointed out that this was something that was set up by the British alongside others. And it wasn't necessarily a foreign court. Then he pointed out that it was in a foreign land. But he still got the cheers, so it wasn't so much. And then to say that Nigel Farage is a Putin lover, I don't think that's quite true. I think that's slightly disingenuous. I think what he was saying was that he could see why Putin invaded because he saw that they were encroaching. But the bottom line is he did say it was Putin's fault. Bill Rammell, OK, what do you think?
I think this is the worst Conservative election campaign I've ever experienced in my life. It's almost like they've got a death wish. You know, you start with the rain-soaked announcement in Downing Street, being pictured in the Titanic yard, that awful decision of leaving the D-Day memorial service early, which I think will go down as the biggest campaign blunder in history. So it is a really bad campaign. But I actually think the tactics vis-a-vis reform, I think they may be finally moving in the right direction, because I think the Tories are in an existential fight with reform. And, you know, the argument they've been using thus far of saying a vote for reform is a vote for Labour, the vast majority of people are comfortable with a Labour victory, millions of them voting for it. I think they need to take Farage and reform on and expose them for the populists they are. And when you've been around in politics, as I have, you think back to previous instances. So go back to the 1987 general election when it was the other way round. The Tories were supreme and Labour was in with a fight with the then Liberal SDP alliance. And in the final weeks of the campaign, we took the alliance on and we ended up beating them by 7 or 8 percentage votes. But I think that's the change in Tory tactics is necessary for their survival.
Well, I'm coming back to Ivor, though, because Ivor, what you said about reform, and you think that Nigel Farage has made a mistake in saying that. I just want to come back to you on that. Why do you think? Do you think that British people are, not that they're not bothered about that, but they're focused on that? Do you not think that we're more insular and focusing on our own selves, as it were, rather than looking at foreign policy at this moment?
On ECHR, do you mean?
Well, on your point, you said Nigel Farage has made a mistake saying that that Putin, you could understand why Putin invaded and encroached onto so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, he actually said that last night, I think, on a Panorama programme.
Yes, he did. Yes.
On BBC One. I was actually also saying about the ECHR and the fact Bill Wright, of course, this was first created, I think it's 1950, by both the Labour and Conservative people who were in power in that time. So to some extent, we're in a situation where it's unbelievable for a prime minister to say to a public thing and say, "Oh, that's a foreign court." It's not a foreign court. It's part of what happens in the United Kingdom because we are one of the signatories to the ECHR. He must have known. And so
but it did get a round of applause.
Doesn't make any sense. No.
But his point was.
I have to say, I don't think it was a round of applause. There were about a few clapping, but if you hear what happened after the programme was closing, you can hear them shouting at him, shame, etc., etc., etc. So I don't think it was a good thing to do.
They all got shouted at. I mean, some of them didn't answer questions. Phillip Blond, final word to you.
Yeah, look, I think leaving the ECHR is a legitimate position. I think it's one that the majority of voters on the right would want, because it doesn't, in effect, allow you to control your borders, which for Tory voters remains one of the preeminent concerns. And I think the debate around asylum and migration has changed by several orders of magnitude. And I'm afraid that the Labour's policies on migration are not convincing and simply won't work. And I think that other European countries are pursuing third party sending
like Rwanda.
Italy is looking at Albania, etc., etc. So I think for Sunak that works, but the trouble is that when he was in power and the advisors around him, none of them wanted to withdraw from the ECHR. So we can't pivot now because the voters won't believe him. And what he's been trying to do...
I've got to quickly get a final word from everybody. So finally then, Bill Rummel, I'm going to start with you. You've got about 10 seconds. Tory tactics, will they work?
Philip let the cat out of the bag when he said leaving the ECHR is popular amongst Tory voters. It is. But if you look at the polls overall, 2/3 of people support membership of the ECHR, and it shows the Tories for a core vote strategy when they're desperate to get above 21%.
So no tactics will work. Quickly to you, either yes or no. Do you think that the Tory tactics are beginning to work? It's no, isn't it?
I don't think they're beginning to work, and unless they take on Farage, it won't work.
Or maybe unless there's some sort of miracle. Phillip Blond, final to use you. Well, yes or no, will the tactics work?
I think it's too late, but I think taking on Farage is the only thing they can do. But I don't think it will work.